Good morning and welcome, everyone. It is that time of the month again where we look at, we're looking at three different presentations today. This morning, we're looking at mushrooms, the very important role or roles that mushrooms play with regards to be it culinary or supplemental support. And then this afternoon, if you'd like to join me, we're looking at weight management for pets. So we haven't tackled that subject for a while. And tonight we're going to be looking at metabolic syndrome with regards to equine health. But this morning we're going to focus on mushroom extracts. If you have any questions throughout this morning's presentation, please feel free to write your questions out in the chat or Q&A, and I will stop at that time to answer your questions. Everybody will get a link to the recording and a copy of the presentation sent out to them tomorrow. So let's take a look at mushrooms today. Now, our mushroom line has been out now for a couple of years, and we have individual mushroom extracts. We are going to be coming out with a combination extract down the road. I don't know that yet, what the time frame is there, but I can let everybody know once I have that information. But this slide here gives you a general idea of the 7 different mushroom extracts that we manufacture at Omega Alpha. And I'm going to be going over each of them separately, but you're going to find that there's a lot of similarities, especially when we're looking at the processing. We're going to talk about processing because that makes a big difference in how we absorb the product, how well the products work. A lot of people focus on what's on the label, and that's fine. But I'm finding a lot of consumers are looking at what goes on behind the scenes and how the products are manufactured and where we get our information, where we get all of our ingredients from. So we're going to start by not getting into the supplements yet. We're going to be looking at the benefits, a little bit of history about mushrooms. And mushrooms, nothing new. Many people like to cook with mushrooms. Other people don't like that because they don't like the texture of mushrooms. So that's where supplements will come in, because you'll have to eat a lot of mushrooms to get the same benefit as what, a small amount of a mushroom extract can give us. But not to say that the culinary aspect of it is not important, because it is very important. But mushrooms have been around and consumed for centuries. Ancient Greeks, for example, believed that mushrooms provided strength for warriors in battle. And then the Romans perceived them as the food of the gods. And then the Chinese culture, and a number of these mushrooms are basically originating from the Chinese culture. They've treasured mushrooms, and they consider mushrooms to be an elixir of life, kind of like the Dong Quai elixir. They look at that as an elixir as well, especially for women, and different parts of the body that can be supported through Dong Quai. But as you all know, we are very well known for our Chinese herbs. So we're going to look at this history first before I actually jump into the supplements. They've been part of our human culture for thousands of years, and looking at whether it's their smell, their taste, the culinary attributes, and again, people cooking with them, different populations cooking with them more than others. But looking at studies and research, which we're very big on at Omega Alpha, several what we call preclinical and clinical studies suggest that the consumption of certain mushroom species, and we're going to talk about this today more than anything else, looking at reducing the risk of certain diseases. So I've got the references at the back. So when you get a copy of the presentation tomorrow, you can delve into that scientific research a little bit more detail. I just wanted to talk about, not all mushroom supplements are created or made the same way. You'll find mushrooms in powder forms, in capsule form, in liquid form. I'm going to talk to you about the benefits and the unique features of our products that we make at Omega Alpha and what we do. So when we look at the structural components of mushrooms, is very important because we take the fruiting bodies, and I'm going to talk about that shortly. The most relevant and one of the more important things to examine when we're looking at mushrooms are the polysaccharides. The polysaccharides are what we call the structural components of the cell wall in mushrooms. And the cell wall, you'll find in any herbal or plant-based nutrient that you consume in your diet, It's all about, are we able to absorb it? Are we able to break down that cell wall? Is our system able to break down that cell wall and absorb the active components of that plant-based material that we're consuming? Looking at anti-tumor, you're going to see immunomodulatory being used, that term being used a lot this morning. And what that means is when you consume anything that has an immunomodulatory effect in your body, it means that people with an overactive immune system can use it and people with an underactive immune system can use it. So if you suffer with an autoimmune condition like diabetes, or if you're celiac, or any situation where your immune system is kind of working overtime, you can take mushrooms. Mushrooms are very safe for a large percentage of the population because we still have to be cautious of certain nutrients, even though they're natural. But mushrooms can also be antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Controlling inflammation is what we always want to do when we're taking something that's a supplement. And especially if we have a diet that's considered inflammatory, if we're eating a lot of, dairy products, or if we're eating a lot of meat coming from animal-based proteins. We also find that you're going to look at the mushroom supplements we're talking about this morning, and you'll see that they're anti-diabetic, so they can be used in combination with other supplements, medications. We're going to talk about that. But the most important component of the polysaccharides, which you'll find in all polysaccharides are found in all plant-based material, are the beta glucans. They're specific to mushrooms, and the beta glucans are basically are what give the mushrooms their ability to support either our immune system or our respiratory system, digestive system, and things like that. So beta glucans have what we call soluble fibers found in the cell walls of certain bacteria, fungi, yeast, algae, and it's what protects these things that we find in nature from dying. So when we consume these beta glucans, it would protect us in the same way from oxidation and things like that. So you'll find that we talk a lot about beta glucans and mushrooms being able to support cardio health, our especially our immune system, our digestive health, or how our blood sugar is, how we're able to balance, or how the body's better able to balance blood sugar. So how we do it at Omega Alpha, and I'm speaking strictly from Omega Alpha's standpoint here. I don't speak on behalf of any other companies, but what we do at Omega Alpha, and these are some of the things that we ask when we're out and about, if you're in a health food store, if you're doing research on mushrooms. Fruiting bodies of the mushrooms are used at Omega Alpha for the extraction method and the concentrate extracts, because the fruiting bodies would be anything that's found above the ground. And if you want to watch and for those of you who have joined me before, there's a show on Netflix. If you get Netflix or YouTube, it's called Fantastic Fungi. And it's a delving into the world of mushrooms and how they're all interconnected under the ground. It's like an interconnected network under the ground. And the photography is phenomenal in this show. It just shows you what goes on underground, what goes on above ground. So we take what is above ground. So we call those the fruiting bodies. If you're out on a nature walk and you see mushrooms, we don't use all mushrooms, of course, because some of them are not meant for human consumption. But the ones that are safe, anything that's found above ground is going to give you the highest amounts of what we call the beneficial beta glucans and other bioactive compounds, because there's more than just beta glucans that are found in the fruiting bodies of the mushrooms. Now, we use a hot water extraction method. It's like a decoction, and that's how we make our cleansing formulas and a lot of our herbal formulas, because when you use a hot water extraction method, it keeps the polysaccharide levels higher. It doesn't change the state of those polysaccharides. And that's what's really going to help with the beneficial health components. Drying, so whenever you see mushrooms in a powdered form, Drying and that heating process of drying can denature the polysaccharides, so you're not going to get as much of the healthy benefits from an encapsulated formula as you will with a liquid formula. Now, I'm not saying that liquids are not always good for everybody, because not everybody likes liquids. Some people prefer capsules because they travel a lot, and that's understandable. It's more practical. But at the end of the day, if you want something that works better and works more quickly, you're going to want to go for a liquid. And of course, we're going to look at the flavor component as well at the end. We don't use any alcohol in the processing. There's no alcohol in our liquid mushroom formulas. Now, there are people who don't like alcohol. It could be for religious reasons. It could be a recovering alcoholic. There's many reasons why people don't like tinctures with alcohol in them. Alcohol also causes the polysaccharides to precipitate, so they separate from the liquid, and they aren't as beneficial then as they separate. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on our mushroom formulas and why, if you can, try a liquid formula versus an encapsulated formula. But again, at the end of the day, it all boils down to your specific preference. And I'm not saying that if you take an encapsulated mushroom formula, it's not going to work for you. I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea here. But whenever you choose a liquid, it's going to work more quickly. You're going to see the benefits more quickly than if you take a capsule. Everybody has their choices as consumers. So you get an idea of what the bottles look like. You're going to see this comment throughout all of the 7 slides that we look at this morning. Looking at the turkey tail, for example. Mushrooms have the ability to modulate the immune system. So again, back to underactive or overactive immune system, mushrooms are good for both. So if you know somebody with an autoimmune condition, mushrooms are very safe. There are certain herbs that will stimulate the immune system further. Echinacea is one of them. Some of our adaptogens do that. So people with autoimmune conditions need to really be careful of anything that stimulates the immune system. But these products will not stimulate, well, they will regulate the immune system. So for the overactive, it will balance. For the underactive, it will support and bring it to a balance. So you're getting 3,000 milligrams a day when we're looking at the turkey tail. Liquids are always easier for the body to use and absorb because we've already extracted the active components through our hot water decoction method. The hot water extraction method is used. It will not denature. A lot of people think because we're using hot water that it's going to degrade the value of the ingredient in question, and that is absolutely not the case. As all of our herbals go through that hot water decoction method. The extracts are derived from anything above ground where we find all of the active components like the beta glucans. We find all of the bioactive compounds in the fruiting bodies that anything you see above the ground, and that's what we always use. They've not been denatured. The ingredients are active, ready to be used in the body. There's no alcohol being used for whatever reason, people not wanting to consume alcohol. There's no alcohol used. They're non-genetically altered. And this is what I find is that when you're getting mushrooms, it's what you find existing in nature. They're not being altered in any way. They're organic. We can't say that for many of our products. And I find a lot of people like them for that reason. The beta glucan amount, a lot of people ask that question when they want to purchase a mushroom-based formula. So the beta glucan amount is 150 milligrams per teaspoon of this formula. But that's not the be all and end all question. We have to keep in mind the other values involved with these formulas. Yes, the beta glucan amount is important, but also that it's a liquid, how it's made. These are all important factors for people. So you're going to see as we go through each of the slides that there's a lot of overlap with what the mushrooms can do. They can help with upper respiratory tract infections, like when people are sick. Urinary and digestive health. This is specific for the Coriolis or the turkey tail. Immune support through chemotherapy and radiation. We don't talk about cancer a lot. And, there are certain limitations to what we can say. But for people who are undergoing chemotherapy or radiation, we find that the turkey tail is quite often used, and practitioners will recommend it for their clients that are going through chemotherapy and radiation, and the symptoms and side effects of these different aspects. And cholesterol regulation. Now, let's say you're already taking something for your immune system and you want to add a mushroom after watching the presentation. You think, oh, I wouldn't mind trying a mushroom formula. Um, you can definitely combine the mushroom formulas with immune support formulas. Like if you're taking vitamin C, or if you're taking, for people who are taking echinacea, golden seal, or maybe you're taking something else, there's no harm in combining these with the mushrooms. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little in more detail when we get to our final slide. But all of our formulas are liquid based. The lion's mane. I have a colleague who takes the lion's mane for anxiety, um, for ADHD. Attention deficit disorder is very common, not just in younger individuals, but a lot of people have a hard time focusing. So lion's mane can be very helpful. Same thing. Immunomodulating, the 3,000 milligrams a day, antioxidants, so they control inflammation, the same process. How we make this formula is the same as all the other ones. We're not using anything underground. We're using all the fruiting bodies. The beta glucan amount is different for each of these different mushrooms, but again, the beta glucan again is very much important for immune support and all the different health benefits that are involved. So with this formula, the lion's mane, nerve support and repair for different neuropathies. It could be people who are diabetic that are, dealing with different neuropathies, pinched nerves, people who have been in accidents, any type of nerve injury, for whatever that reason might be. Maybe someone's been in a car accident, or they've hurt themselves playing a sport, or whatever the case might be. Nerve injury, we find lion's mane can be very beneficial there. Mood regulation. So let's say someone is taking vitamin D, or they're taking something to regulate their mood. We can add lion's mane, can be very beneficial for something like that. Memory, not everybody is into the ginkgo biloba. Not everybody can take ginkgo biloba because it's contraindicated, if they've got high blood pressure or if they're on certain medications. And this is why the mushrooms provide a nice, safe alternative in many situations where they're a single ingredient formula, so there's not as many contraindications when they're taking medications. If they're on any type of diabetic medication like metformin, for example, if they want to regulate their blood sugar, you could use our glucolyzer with the lion's mane, and there's no contraindications. Heart disease. A lot of people suffer with heart disease. So for men and women, adults, children, our mushrooms are safe for children. You would just reduce the dose based on the weight of the child. A lot of people will stay away from these types of formulas because it's not suggesting that it's meant for children, but it's definitely safe. Again, you would just reduce the dose based on the weight of the child. All dosing on labels is based on 150 pounds. That's where we get our dosing from. So again, you can just reduce the dose based on the weight of the child. That's just an easier way of dealing with it. Cordyceps. We find a lot of people using cordyceps, a lot of athletes, a lot of physically active people, people who need a little bit of boost to their energy, which I find a lot of people do nowadays, and especially with daylight savings time. Daylight savings time is something that really can throw people's their circadian rhythm and their cycles off, and they have a harder time. They're more fatigued. Again, as their body gets used to the new time change, they're fine. A lot of people just work through it, but you can use these formulas during these times as well. You're looking at the same 3,000 milligrams, the same processing goes on for the cordyceps. I know, again, I have a former colleague of mine who was using this for allergies and looking at supporting the immune system, boosting energy, and found it worked very well for allergies. So, depending on everybody has their own way of supporting their body. So, when I say if you find something that works for you, I always say to stick with it. Some people take vitamin C, some people use our Endura Strength, some people use our Immunol or our ImmuBoost to support their immune system. Some people use our mushroom extracts. When you find a product that works, and we need to figure this out. We need to experiment with different supplements sometimes. And we all have different lifestyles, and we're all different biochemically speaking. So as we find things that work for us, I always say stick with it. We're not trying to confuse anybody here. We just want you to look at different options. Maybe you've been looking for something that wouldn't be contraindicated for a medication for maybe yourself or a family member or a friend. But at the end of the day, I find mushrooms are one of the safest things to take because of the fact that you get their own natural. They're organic. They've not been genetically altered. We don't genetically alter our formulas or herbs, but we also look at single ingredient formulas, less of a contraindication when we're looking at medications. And that's why a lot of people will go to mushroom extracts. So, kidney and lung health. Now, let's say you're taking our kidney flush or our lung flush. You want to do a cleanse. It is spring. It is a common time of year for people to cleanse. You can definitely add a mushroom product if you are cleansing and supporting your kidneys or your lungs. You don't have to, you know, stay away from it because you're doing a cleanse. The mushrooms are safe to take during a cleansing program. If you need to boost your energy, or you're starting to exercise more and you find you need more energy to exercise, and usually when we start to exercise, we do tend to have more energy. It's just getting going, getting started. And so this is where the cordyceps can come in and give us a little bit more energy. So, when we go for a walk, or if you join a gym, or if you're doing something new, it can give you that energy boost that you need. And for people when we're talking about libido, no, we could be talking about sexual health, or we could be talking about just overall drive in general, where we need a pick me up. It doesn't necessarily, quite often we'll see when our libido is low or our drive is low, it does affect our sexual health. Quite often this goes hand in hand. That can help people who are dealing with libido in general, where your drive is just tanking and your sexual health is also being affected that way. So we see these wonderful attributes to do with mushrooms. And again, let's go back to the culinary aspect of mushrooms. I know a lot of people who don't like to cook with mushrooms because you know they don't like the texture. A lot of people say, oh, it's like eating rubber. Oh, I don't like that. Well, they can get the health benefits of mushrooms in other ways. And even if you do cook with mushrooms, you'd have to consume a lot of mushrooms to get the benefits of what you would get in a supplement form. And keeping in mind that supplements are a more concentrated way of getting nutrients from mushrooms. Having said that, I don't want people to rely solely on supplements as a way of improving their health. We need to look at the lifestyle aspect of why we're feeling a certain way and how we can improve our overall health. Um, and looking at now our next mention of looking at mushrooms, looking at the benefits of traditional Chinese medicine and how everybody, when we look at traditional Chinese medicine, and we're well known for the combination of different herbs when we're looking at combining Western herbs with traditional Chinese medicine, but looking at the effects of mushrooms and the role they play with regards to traditional Chinese medicine, all about strengthening the body and tonifying or supporting qi. And qi is the overall energy in the body from a traditional Chinese medicinal aspect. So looking at mushrooms and how certain mushrooms can act as adaptogens, and you'll see some of them in some of our other formulas. Reishi mushroom is found in our ImmuBoost and some of our other formulas, our Endura Strength, from looking at it from an adaptogenic standpoint, and can be used in combination. So you can combine reishi mushroom with other herbal formulas if you're already taking something with reishi in it. And how you know if you're taking too much is that you will notice your stool is looser. So that's a good way of knowing that, okay, I've taken too much. I just need to reduce the dose of my reishi mushroom or whatever formula you might be taking. Looking at the same mechanisms when we look at beta glucans, different amounts again, because it will be different based on the lot, based on cultivation processes, and looking at our mushrooms come from all over the world, by the way. They come from North America, they come from China, they come from all over the world, and we do test everything in-house, especially people who are concerned about anything coming from China. We check everything, and we've had reliable sources in all the years we've been in business where we check everything in-house. All of our herbs, everything comes in a whole form. It's not cut, it's not powdered. When something comes in that's not whole, things can be added to them. And so we check everything. We have machinery in our lab that tests everything in-house. And then we also send it out for third-party testing. So when we're looking at or mushrooms like reishi can start support with cardiovascular, cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure, liver support, insomnia, depression, brain health, respiratory health. These are situations mushrooms are not just meant for one single part of the body. They support our body in different ways. So educating on the different benefits of these single herb or single mushroom formulas can be very beneficial to many people, especially if they are on different medications. Maitake mushroom, and again, people who cook with maitake, we're going to look at shiitake, reishi mushroom, a lot of different I guess you could say ethnic populations or different cultures will cook different types of mushrooms, and they incorporate these into their daily living, or they make them from time to time. So this is another way of getting the advantages or the benefits. But again, you will not get the same amount of health benefits as you do with a supplement. But let's not replace a good healthy diet with supplements and rely totally on supplements as a way of supporting our immune system. I always try to suggest against that. We know people don't want to change their lifestyle, but these little changes can really make a big difference at the end of the day. So with maitake, we've got support for cancer support programs like, when we look at the turkey tail, as we did at the very beginning, mushrooms are well known, um, safe to be used during cancer support programs like chemotherapy or radiation. We find a lot of patients will take mushrooms for that very reason. And if anybody wants more scientific information on the value of mushrooms and what they do, please let me know, because I just give a general overview in these presentations. But if you want to get more into the nitty-gritty science of it all, I'd be happy to share that information for anybody who wants to look at that. Liver and how they support different parts of the body, blood sugar, immune, cardiovascular, liver. So again, don't ever hesitate to use these products in combination or by themselves. And then the chaga mushroom. And we're going to look at taste as well when we get to our final slide, which we're getting to shortly. But they all have polysaccharides. We use the same part of the mushroom. And again, back to that Netflix show. I couldn't believe it when I saw this show. And even if you don't have Netflix, look up Fantastic Fungi. And it is a perfect way of understanding if you're new to mushrooms, or if you've, done some research on mushrooms and you've never watched this show before. Again, the photography is phenomenal, and it's showing underground networking and all the value. It's just a different aspect and a different way of looking at mushrooms, and I found it personally to be very educational. So if you're just embarking on your mushroom, um, on your journey of learning more about mushrooms, I highly recommend it. You could probably, I think you can find it on YouTube as well. For those, I know not everybody has Netflix, but I'd highly recommend Fantastic Fungi if you've not watched it before. It's very insightful and a very educational journey, to find out more about the value that mushrooms bring to our life. So whether it's for supporting the immune system, blood sugar, cardiovascular, you see this overlapping of health benefits with these different mushrooms. And again, not encroaching on medications, and usually not a problem for people who are on medications. But again, let me know if you're on certain medications, or, usually we recommend 2 to 3 hours away from medications just to be safe, but it gives you a general idea of where single ingredient formulas can really be of more benefit to some people, especially if they're on a number of different medications. And shiitake, again, many cultures cook with shiitake mushrooms. I personally love mushrooms. Not everybody does, again. It could be the flavor, it could be the consistency, the texture that are really keeping people away from gaining the benefits or consuming mushrooms, because there's so many different benefits associated with them. So, look, we're going to look at, using these products singularly, and again, combining them with each other as we get to our final slide. So with the shiitake mushroom, again, support during cancer treatment programs to ease the side effects of chemo, radiation, supporting the immune system during these times, or even just supporting the immune system during the holidays, when we're looking at, viral or bacterial infections, because mushrooms are antiviral and they're antibacterial in what they can support. Cholesterol, blood sugar. So many people nowadays are dealing with blood sugar issues, insulin resistance. So mushrooms are another aspect or another way to support the body and help the body balance blood sugar, support the liver, which is an organ that is linked to blood sugar issues as well. So the shiitake is another option for many people. Looking at how we can use these products together. Now, I'm always talking about synergy, because when we look at the majority of our formulas that we make at Omega Alpha, the majority of them are multi-ingredient formulas, synergistic effects, looking at dosing not necessarily being high, but it's more about the synergy. So it might seem a little bit, you might be perplexed as to why we have single ingredient formulas. A lot of practitioners will recommend single ingredient mushroom formulas because they'll see how that mushroom works for their clients or for their patients. Nutritionists will recommend single ingredient formulas sometimes just because it gives them a baseline as to where to go from there. But we are coming out with a combination mushroom formula, not knowing when that will be, but we will be doing that eventually. But all of these mushrooms, they can be used on their own, of course. And then they can be combined. So you could use shiitake and maitake together, or you could use the cordyceps and the shiitake together. It all depends on what the health goals are for you, your friends, your family. The mushroom extracts can be used together amongst themselves, and they can be used with other omega alpha supplements. So maybe you're taking a liver flush or a kidney flush or a lung flush, or maybe you're taking vitamin D and you want to know if you can take these mushroom supplements, and the answer is yes. They can be added to coffee, tea, smoothies, or any other foods. Many functional mushrooms have a neutral or earthy flavor, as you can imagine, and they're easily palatable. Now, you can add them to a protein shake or a smoothie if you like to do that. I find smoothies and shakes a great way to add everything that you take because you can mix it all together and drink it. For those people who like to have smoothies or protein shakes, not everybody likes to do that. I know people who put it in their coffee or their tea and it gives it a nice flavor. People are concerned, won't it denature the value of the mushroom if I mix it in with a hot beverage? And the answer is no, because please keep in mind that the herbs, these mushrooms are manufactured using a hot water decoction method. So the hot water is already being used during the manufacturing, so it won't denature the efficacy of the mushrooms if you mix it in with a hot beverage. They can be taken any time of the day if you're taking something for energy. For the cordyceps, you can take it at the beginning of the day and during the day to give you a little bit more pep in your step throughout the day. For people who have a hard time sleeping, it shouldn't be an issue taking it at night, but if you're very sensitive to anything that could increase your energy, you might want to not take it at nighttime. Supplements can be taken preventatively in acute situations, so short periods of time and longer term. So if you need to take something because you're sick, you can take it for a month at a time, or if you want to take it for 2 months at a time, it's not going to be a problem. And if you are taking medications, my suggestion would be to take the mushrooms at least 2 to 3 hours away from medications just to be safe. If you forget and you overlap it with a medication, chances are it's not going to be the end of the world, but we just like to err on the side of caution just in case. And you can give me a call. You can reach out to me via email or call our toll-free number. And we can have a chat and talk about any medications that you might be concerned about. And if I don't know, I can reach out to Dr. Chang, who is our chief formulator for all three of our product lines. So that brings me to the end of this morning's presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you'd like to ask? It could be about mushrooms, it might be about something else. As I mentioned earlier, I will be sending a link to the recording and I will send everybody a copy of the presentation tomorrow, and you can revisit the presentation. And if you do, I'm always here for any questions you have, regardless if it's today or tomorrow or down the line. I do speak with a number of you from time to time. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. And welcome to April, everybody. I hope you'll join me next month. Um, Hopefully everyone will have a wonderful month, and I thank you for your time and your participation this morning. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody.